Hi, I'm Gina Balarin, founder and director of Verballistics and the CEO's voice. I am so happy to be here on the Online Prosperity Show. And in this episode, you're going to discover what Gina Ballerina did with her point shoes, the lessons she has for people like her growing up, why CEOs need to listen to their audience and understand what's in their hearts, how they can communicate that to their audience, and what this has to do with the little girl who was playing with her dolls and realized that her life was not destined to be on the stage, but destined to be the person standing behind the person who gets a standing ovation. Tune in to hear all of this and more, and then hit me up on LinkedIn. Until then, enjoy.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today, wow, we have a magnificent guest joining us. Gina, how are you doing today?
I am delighted to be with you, Prosper.
Absolutely. Well, today we're going to be talking everything authenticity, communication, corporate storytelling, and content creation. And for those that actually know how the internet works, people come to the internet to get information. And if your website or your profiles is the one providing that information, then people get to know you, like you, and trust you. And we all know that people do business with those they know, like, and trust. But for trust to happen, there has to be authenticity, and there has to be stories that people can actually relate to. So just telling people what it is that you do, doesn't cut it anymore these days. And as we all know, content is queen. But today we've got the ballerina of content joining us. Now, Gina, I could go on and on trying to fit in, all the accolades and everything else that you have done. And you would also know I'm a little bit starstruck because, you being a TEDx speaker and everything else, I'm just thinking, is the Online Prosperity Show a platform for geniuses like us? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what's the story behind Verballistics.
Well, let's begin with the story behind Gina Ballerina. When I was little, I wanted to be a ballerina. It was my desire and dream to stand up on stage on point shoes and, flit around and look pretty. But I also wanted to be a professional businesswoman. And so I had to make a decision at some point in my teenage years as to whether I was going to pursue the career of actually being a dancer, a professional dancer, or whether I was going to try and make a living in a professional corporate context. And somehow the words won out over the movement. But that doesn't mean I gave up on my dream of being a professional ballerina, because I actually married someone with the surname Balarin. And so I ended up being able to be Gina Ballerina for the rest of my life.
Be careful what you ask for, right? Because
Absolutely.
you never know how it gets delivered. So obviously, like you say, and thank you so much for sharing that interlude there. Now, the words "one over movement," you went on and created something remarkable. Tell us about that journey.
When I was very little, my mum came rushing into my bedroom one day because she heard these horrible sounds of distress and anger. And she said, Gina, Gina, are you okay? And I looked up at her with great surprise and said, what are you talking about? She said, it sounded like someone was upset or hurt. She said, I looked at her with great surprise. And I said, Mom, that was just my dolls. And it was at that moment that I realized that not only was I a storyteller, but I was also a dramatist. And I wasn't reading and writing prolifically in those days, but that desire to tell a story kind of led me through my entire career. And I found my way into marketing as a profession. Even before I knew what marketing was, I was creating websites back when websites were a brand new thing, and writing emails back when email databases were brand new. And over the years, the idea that words have power became the brand Verballistics. Verbal plus ballistic is making your words go mental. And that evolved not just from a content marketing perspective, where a corporate pays someone to write something that sounds good that they then share with their audience. It actually evolved to embrace all of me, the person that wants to be on stage, the person that loves language, the person that communicates almost as importantly as breathing. And that is how I came to be the CEO's voice, the wind beneath their wings, the person who stands behind the person getting a standing ovation.
Fantastic. You see, when CEOs speak, they usually want to talk either to rally their team or to get funding or to just market their business. And half of the time, so many of them are not able to string together a story or even their origin story because they're really close to the product. Now, you being a storyteller, and knowing that your role is to be the wind beneath the CEO's wings, what is it that you actually do with them, and how do you help them connect with either their customers, their investors, or their teams?
Oh, that's a beautiful and very complex question. Let me see if I can break it down. The art of communication isn't just about getting a message from A to B. It's actually about understanding that when you say something, what someone else hears may not be what came out of your mouth. And so, whenever someone of influence is trying to get a message to someone else, so if a CEO is trying to talk to their team, or a CEO is trying to talk to their funders, or a CEO is trying to talk to their board, what they're trying to do is put their best selves out there. What they might not realize is that the person who is the recipient may not want that version of themselves. Because actually, listeners are more interested in themselves than they are in the person who's talking. And this is where marketing comes in. Ironically, a lot of marketers shove messages out there and think that that's their job done. It's not. It's not even a fraction of their job done. The best marketers understand that it's not about you, it is about your audience. Now, you and I had a discussion where we talked about that the content will find the people these days. And that to me is an absolute epiphany, because a few years ago, people thought, oh, I'm just going to talk and someone will hear. And then it shifted into a position where, oh, I need to talk about what people really want to hear. I need to understand my audience. And now it's kind of shifted back the other way again. But the only reason it's shifted is because if we are true to ourselves, the messages that we create find an audience who identifies with who we are. And to go back to your question about how do I help CEOs share that message, it is about identifying what is it that is true and powerful in what they're saying that is going to be true and powerful for the person who is listening.
I quite like that, and I like how you blended in, how it was in the past, what it's like now, and hopefully it's gonna stay like that for a while because so many people don't understand the nuances of all of that. And you keep talking about trust, and you keep talking about um, you know, putting a message out there. Some of the ways that a business can do that is probably not through them saying what they do, but through other people talking on their behalf, which becomes social proof. Now, how does that also work hand in hand with people talking about themselves plus the social proof that maybe comes along from people that are happy with their service?
Oh, Prosper, you have absolutely nailed the definition of customer marketing right there and then. Because I can talk about who I am and what I do, and I can claim that these people are happy, but quite frankly, if they're prepared to talk about me on my behalf, that is social proof. I don't care how big or small you are or how impressive your company is. If you don't have customers who love you and are prepared to speak about you when you're not in the room, you're missing a trick. And I suppose that's where authenticity for me comes in. If you cut someone down the middle and what spills out is more of them, you know you're onto a good wicket. What I try to do in encouraging senior leaders to really share the best of themselves and the best of their companies with the world is to be able to identify what is that core, that essence, that real value that makes people come alive. What is it that their customers are saying about them when they're not in the room? Now, everyone needs to tell stories because facts tell, but stories sell. But the question is, which stories do you want to tell? And it's often a challenge for senior leaders to feel courageous enough to share their vulnerability. And yet, vulnerability is the one thing that we all have in common. Admitting that we are human means admitting that we are not perfect. And the irony is that sometimes your customers are happiest after they've been unhappy, as long as you can fix the mistake, apologize, and move forward. And so, in my many years of content marketing, writing customer case studies, helping prepare customers to stand up on stage, interviewing customers, telling their stories, putting their videos out there, creating content around them, the most powerful thing has always got to be the story of where something went wrong and therefore they became more loyal as a result. Because that is really a true testament to vulnerability and to the power of pure human connection. That ability to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong, let's fix this.
Mm, I like that. In a world where so many people just take it to social media these days, you just make a late delivery and oh my God, the whole world already knows that, that 5-day delivery is not exactly as it looks like, even on public holidays. People now have this sort of expectation. How do you help, these companies to actually come up with some sort of a communication strategy that goes beyond what they can control but is happening in the dark web there?
Oh, that's a tricky question. And I think you might want to be talking to PR people, business analysts, and probably those who are involved in corporate massaging as well as corporate messaging. I am more curious about what people do to leverage the power of the communications they already have. So if we think about literally controlling the messages that you as a human being can share, right? We're not talking about what press releases you put out there. At least I'm not. I am talking specifically about how does a leader use their best tools of communication to show their best self and the best version of their companies authentically, because there is a difference. Marketing for many years has been about spin, and that's why I got a little bit antsy about the question. I used to work with a great PR guy, and he actually did more than just spin questions. But every time I spotted that he was heading a little bit more towards the not quite truthful, but let's put a nice spin on it, I used to say to him, you spin me right round, baby, right round.
All right, yeah.
And I would stop him right there because I'm going, no, 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 no. I have an authenticity radar. And when you're going down that path, I stop trusting you because I sense that what you're telling me is not the truth. So your question was, how do we help organizations manage their reputations? That's a bigger and braver and bolder question that really deals with corporate communications, not individual communications, and not the power of an individual voice. What I like to talk about is thought leadership. Thought leadership is the ability for an individual leader to put thoughts out there in a way that don't just say the same thing that everyone else is saying. Now, it takes a powerful and brave leader to actually engage in true thought leadership, because thought leadership requires you to have a thoughtful position. It requires you to be able to look at everything that's going on in the world and agree with some and disagree with some and be unafraid to state your case, backed by evidence and experience, articulated beautifully. A lot of leaders are good at backing that evidence and at getting the arguments forward, but they're not always great at being human. And they're not always great at the connecting the dots between this is what I want to tell you and this is what your audience needs to hear. Because true change only happens when people are part of that change. But communication, when it's done well, helps people want to be part of that change. It makes them get excited. It makes them work better. The principle behind all of the business work that I do is if you have happy people and they're motivated, they're going to work harder. When they work harder, they are more productive. When your people are more productive, you have a better business and hopefully make more money. There is a direct linear correlation between those facts. But it seems like a no-brainer to me that in order to do that, you want to make sure that your people are motivated and happy. How do you make your people motivated and happy? Believe it or not, it's not about paying them more. Studies have disproved that. Yes, people need to be paid a basic amount. Yes, they need to be earning enough to make their lives worthwhile and commensurate with what the industry charges. But they need to feel like what they're doing makes a difference. And that is the art of good leadership communication. Knowing what to say and how to say it to inspire people to want to show up at work and to want to make a difference. That's what I teach them.
That's interesting because so many people think having a vision, a mission statement, and a unique selling proposition is all they need to get started. But you literally turn these into stories that then rally, the troops behind them and things of that nature, right?
Absolutely. The stories don't have to be about what happens at work. They can be about what happens in their personal lives. They don't have to be about what happens in their personal lives. They can be about something they saw on TV or something they observed or something they thought of while they were driving to work. The power of stories is, in fact, the fact that they can shape and change or confine us, depending on how we define it. And I'm looking away because there's a fellow I spoke with recently called Robert Teague. And he came up with this idea that stories have three purposes. Stories can shape us, stories can change us, and stories can define us. And a true master of the art of storytelling knows when to use which type of story and how to embrace their own inner stories to be able to encourage people to make positive change happen in the world.
Fantastic. Even just listening to you, there's grace in the way that you speak. Some of us just sprechen Sie, and hopefully somebody would understand what we're saying. So you've actually obviously as somebody who's got a passion and love communication, and it's not just something that has come about because that's your career, but as you say, it started off as a little girl. You've become a professional speaker and author. You've also appeared on television. I think it was the Marlow FM and the business radio and all those sort of places. And you also have a YouTube sort of channel. Tell us about this. How does all of this help you communicate a whole lot more and put yourself in a position that people would say, yep, this is Gina and I really want to talk to her?
Being a master of communication, and I wouldn't say I am, but I'm saying I'm pretty damn good at it, requires you to understand it in all its forms. And if you think about communication models, you have to understand how to listen as well as how to speak. If you think about how you articulate yourself, you have to understand how you write as well as how you talk. One of the biggest challenges in my life was actually preparing for a TEDx talk that I did a few years ago, because I thought I was a good speaker until I started preparing to do a 17-minute speech. And it was the hardest thing I think I've ever done in my life. Wow. Why was it so hard? Because when you're good at something and you realize you're not as good as you think you are, it's a real ego buster. But it did make me work damn hard. I think I prepared I don't know, 30 to 40 hours to do one 17-minute speech. But
Right.
by the end of it, I knew I nailed that moment when I stood up on stage and I could feel there was a connection between me and my audience. I wasn't just talking or repeating or regurgitating my words, I was connecting emotionally. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do for leaders now. Because you can stand up on a stage and people have to listen to you because you're the CEO or the CXO or the CFO or the CMO, whatever it is, right? You have a certain amount of credibility that requires people to pay attention. But that doesn't mean that they're going to continue to pay attention. It doesn't mean that they're going to want to share your story. So the art is, in fact, in giving people enough training and confidence that they can deliver to a TEDx level without having to do 40 hours of rehearsal. And
Mm.
that is possible. It requires discipline and it requires passion. And when that happens, something almost indefinable takes place in the audience. You're no longer just a person talking. You are a person connecting emotionally with your audience. And I've always loved being on stage. I've always loved sharing my message with an audience because there's something that shifts in that moment of a beauty of connection. And I thought that when I was no longer dancing, that I would never get to experience that with people again. But it turns out that communication takes many forms. And having been a dancer, I think gives me an ability to understand what's happening non-verbally as well as what's happening verbally. That's a real power in and of itself. May I share where I think that story came from, that ability to connect, to understand that non-verbal cue?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Many years ago, I attended a performance of Romeo and Juliet at the ballet. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard the music, but it's incredibly emotional. And there's this one particular bit that goes da 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 da. And you kind of feel that everyone is this pomp and circumstance and ceremony, and the music just takes you there. That's nonverbal. People were dancing. They were standing up on a stage doing ballet, and yet the message was so incredibly clear. And the powerful performance was so indescribable that even sitting in the cheap seats at the back of the audience, when Romeo and Juliet were lying at the end and she had poisoned herself and he picked her up and danced with what he thought was this dead body, it was this moment of almost deep trauma. You were there, you were connected with them. The emotions transformed through any experience. Not a single word spoken.
Just like now, right? Because you got me so captivated in the story, and I literally was in that theater. That was beautiful in and of itself. Wow. Wow. I would have been the guy in the chip seats going,
I
hey.
was. I was the girl in the cheap seats. I mean, like even describing it now, there's tears in my eyes because the memory is so powerful. So the question is if we can channel this deep emotion without using a single word, how can I help people who are perhaps better at numbers? You know, there's a lot of CEOs who came from a CFO, from a financial background, and they love their numbers. They understand them. Numbers are like friends to them, right? They wouldn't be in that position if they didn't understand humans too. But they're perhaps not as comfortable in the world of words as they are in the world of numbers. And so the art is in finding the thing, that spark that makes every leader come alive, the reason that they do what they do. And hopefully, they're working for an organization where they can see and nurture that spark. Hopefully, there are elements of their organization that give them moments of pride and delight. And if they've forgotten about that, then the first place to go is back to their happy customers and to ask them, what makes you excited about our product or service? How does this help you solve your problems? Because what often people forget is we see a business as being, we produce A and we charge money for it, and we need to meet our shareholders' expectations, and therefore we need to cut money, usually in another part of the business. But we forget that behind all of that is actually humans. Humans buy for a reason. They want to solve a problem. They want to feel part of something. And some of the biggest brands actually stand and fall because they stand for something. Why do you pay so much more for an iPhone, even though Steve Jobs is long since dead, than you do for a Google phone? Because the brand has a value that is intangible and yet real. And ironically, Apple has done with their brand what Romeo and Juliet did for me. They created a connection, an emotional connection that made their audience go, oh, wow.
And thank you so much for taking us on that journey, because sometimes when people think they're communicating, they're not even scratching the surface. And with what you've just done right in this, 15 seconds of that, interlude, really, really showed us the depth of where somebody has to go with this. And thank you so much for that. Now, not only are you doing this for profit, you're also helping others who not are not going for thought leader position, but are just looking for confidence and skills to get onto a new job, because it's not easy having to speak to people that you think are superior to you and being heard in such a way that they will choose you over a sea of me too candidates right there. Tell us about your approach as a board member of Project Displacement.
We changed the name from Project Displaced to Project Placed after COVID because we realized that people are no longer displaced. They have found their place, but sometimes they need to be in a new place. And sitting on the board of this organization is incredibly meaningful. And I'm privileged to do that because the volunteers at Project Placed help Australians who are out of work or looking for work or wanting to change jobs find their confidence again. Yes, they provide CV services and they provide career coaching and guidance. And every single one of them is a qualified career coach in their own right. But they're also mental health coaches. And I don't know if about you, but I've been unemployed a good few times in my life. And it's some of the hardest times to get through. That sense of self can be almost eroded, almost destroyed. And it's really nice to know that someone's got your back. And one of the really valuable services that Project Placed provides is mental health support services for people who are in a career element. That's not to say that we aren't blessed in Australia to have lots of support for mental health. They're out there. But the challenge is that people need to actually reach out and say, I need the help. And if there's one thing I can say on behalf of Project Placed and our extremely amazing volunteers and the other members of the board, it is, please, if you need help, ask. And if you know someone who needs help, tell them. There is an organization where people who would charge $350 to $500 an hour give their time up for free to help you fix your CV or find a new job or learn new skills that you might not have learned. That's what Project Place does. And we just need more people to use it because it's there.
Absolutely. And for those that are watching, if you know anyone that is in need of getting placed in a job, just like how COVID really, really displaced a lot of people, and some people might have too much pride to even acknowledge and accept. And like Gina says, just ask. So when you obviously, I mean, obviously now we're going back to, your journey a little bit there. You did mention that you kind of got, displaced in work a couple of times, but then you went on and started your own sort of business, and now you are successful. What have you done to, okay, besides the communication, but what is it that you have also done to actually help yourself be seen and be known, and to actually put yourself out there, because so many people might find that also very difficult.
It's a long journey, Prosper. How long have we got?
We haven't started running out of tape yet, so
You and I both know, having grown up in Africa, about the power of education. And
that's
I think we are privileged to not only have been educated, but have really respected education, and almost for me, I crave it. I
yeah.
love the idea of good getting more knowledge. How does that help me in my career? Because I get deeply curious about something. Uh, so I've been very, very fortunate to have worked on stuff where I've had help in getting educated. Um, I worked at the university where I did my master's degree, and they gave me a discount just because my thesis was good enough. And so they said, all right, well, we'll let you do your third year for free. I mean, like, isn't that amazing? Right. So I realize how incredibly fortunate I am to have had educational opportunities. One of those educational opportunities was a bit of a double-edged sword. I was working for an organization where they sponsored me to do a professional diploma in marketing. And I actually was made redundant from the company. But because I was made redundant, they didn't require me to pay back the education that they'd sponsored. So I got lucky there again, right? But all of this is just a foundation. At the end of the day, running your own business isn't just about doing the work and getting your finances sorted and getting a good tax accountant. It's about asking for help, but it's also about understanding the fundamentals of sales and marketing. And I
Mm.
think the power of my network has been incredibly influential in allowing me to do the work that I do. If there's a lesson I can leave for people, it is don't be afraid of the systems that you need to do to keep yourself sustainable. I think too many small business owners think they can do everything and they can do it on their own, or they try to reinvent the wheel, or they try to think that there's a better way to do everything and ignore the fact that, you know, working in big businesses sometimes sucks, but in some ways it's a safety net because you have structures and frameworks and things that someone else has already worked out. Often as an entrepreneur, you've got to work that stuff out yourself. And it's easy to kind of do a little bit if you don't really like it and kind of stop when it's good enough. I think the biggest lesson I've learned is to identify when you're stuck, who you need and who you trust to help you, and to take the risk of investing in someone who has skills in areas that you don't possess. That's the biggest learning. Ask for help, accept help, and do what they tell you.
Because if you don't, then they're not gonna want to keep passing on that help. From what you were saying, I was just rehearsing in my head. If you want to go far, you go alone, but if you want to go further, you go together. And that's just the epitome of what you've just said there. Now, Gina, obviously the people that are watching right now are probably wondering, how is it that you will be able to help them with, sort of notice that you help them amplify their message, so they can reach their customer, or if they're CEO, they can then obviously have their own voice and be a thought leader. Now, what specific product or service are you excited to share with us today that people can jump onto, and how can people get a hold of it?
I'm going to share several. The first one is The Secret Army, Leadership Marketing, and the Power of People. It's a book I wrote a while ago. It was a manifesto about the power that people bring to their day-to-day work, the reason that we go to work in the first place. But it's also about how to empower people to use all elements of their secret army, the leaders, their employees, and the third, but as we've discussed already, possibly most important element, their customers. So check it out on Amazon. It's available just all over the world. The Secret Army, Leadership Marketing, and the Power of People. The second thing I'll encourage people to do is to think about how you communicate at work. If you're not comfortable with your writing, get some support from someone who understands, lives, eats, sleeps, and breathes the living word. If you are not comfortable with the way you speak, talk to me about how to change. It might be that you speak too slowly or too fast, too loud or too soft, that you're not confident. We go through processes to be able to help you identify your true self and make yourself shine in a way that is really comfortable. And the last element is if you're looking for marketing support and you just need someone to join all of those pieces together and help you communicate a clear vision, let's talk about your marketing communications strategy. Because you can have the best stories and not know where to put them. You could have the best social media and still not to be able to get clients. You could have the best website and struggle to actually convert that. At the end of the day, I help people make their messages come alive. I make their words go mental. But they have to want to make those words go mental. So at the end of the day, if you are one of my customers, please make sure that you want to do the work, that you want to get involved. And by all means, you better turn up and be authentic, because otherwise, I think there are probably other people who can serve you better than I can.
Fantastic. And what would be the best way that people can get a hold of you there, Gina?
Check me out on LinkedIn, please. Reach out, connect with me. You can also go to verballistics.com.au, but quite frankly, my LinkedIn profile is better than my website.
Fantastic. I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes so that people can actually get started on their journey. Now, obviously, as we draw close to wrapping up, Gina, you obviously left your pointy shoes for a ballpoint pen, all right? And that is something that happened when you were a young girl. Now, if you would reflect back, and if you could offer maybe one piece of advice to your younger self, what would be that message when you are actually hanging up those pointy shoes?
I think the message would be just because there are people in the world who don't want you to be extraordinary in their domain, it doesn't mean that you should let them trample on your dreams. I didn't become a professional ballerina, partly because there were people in my life who wanted to squash me. And they didn't want me to shine and glow and be incandescent. And I've spent a lifetime realizing that sometimes the best thing you can be is 100% yourself. And I'll leave you with a quote from Marianne Williamson, who wrote A Journey into Love. It is our light, not our darkness, that most terrifies us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brave, to be beautiful, to be amazing? Actually, who are you not to be? Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others won't feel afraid around you. We were born to make manifest the glory that is within us. And it's not just in some of us, it's in all of us. As we let our own light shine, we automatically give others permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. I wish that girl who hung up her point shoes knew that she had so much light to shine, and I wish she had the courage to do it earlier.
Oh, what a beautiful statement and sentiment. And I'm hoping that young girl is listening, and whoever's watching right now is also taking heed, because there's a lot of people that don't have your best interest at heart, and they're just going to be walking all over your dreams with whatever limited view of life they have for themselves. And as Gina has eloquently spoken, this I don't know if this is going to be an episode or poem, because it really was performed. And I can't wait for this to be, played on repeat by many folk out there that are waiting to actually put their message out there. First of all, if they're a CEO or somebody of note, and to actually reach the right customers, because yeah, you know, we've got so much to give in and of ourselves. So thank you so much for your time there, Gina. Like I told you, I was gonna get starstruck. You see, I'm also mincing my words now because I've seen your work and everything else, and I'm really hoping we've done justice to your communication skills. Even though I was shaking in my boots, but I'm hoping today was a wonderful day, and thank you so much for your time on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Prosper. It's been a pleasure and a privilege.
Absolutely. And for those that are watching right now, thank you so much. I encourage you to check the links in the show notes so that you can connect with the brilliance of Gina Ballerina right there. I can't stop saying that now since you have told me that. There you go. I mean, we've heard a story from when she got started and how she's actually helping CEOs become thought leaders in their realm. And I encourage people to actually just dive back into this episode, because there's so many nuggets of wisdom that are in there, that you might have missed out, because when you watch something again, things start clicking in. Oh, pass this on to somebody who really needs to be a thought leader in their space, and let them know that there's Gina out there who can actually help them amplify their message so they can reach the right customers, elevate their CEO voice. And don't forget to subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show, where you will come across enriching conversations like this. Until next time, keep prospering and keep communicating and putting your words out there. Bye for now.